welcome everyone. Brendan, Patrick, thanks for joining us. I'm Steve. I'll be your host for Your Minimum Wage is Going Up. And how are you going to deal with that? In all seriousness, thank you everybody for joining. This is obviously a big topic in restaurants, minimum wage just in general, and the regulatory environment that we all live and work within and have to deal with on a year-to-year basis. My name is Steve Hooper. I'm the president of partnerships and business development here at TipHaus, but I'm actually an operator by background. I used to run a restaurant group here in Seattle and got to know the TipHaus team by using their software and jumped to doing this now. So this is a topic near and dear to my heart because I have lots of scars from doing all the things that Brendan and Patrick are going to chat about today. So really appreciate everybody joining us and excited for this conversation. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. There's a live chat and a Q&A, so please drop comments and questions into there. We'll get to Q&A towards the end of this conversation. We are going to be recording this for folks to be able to view later and come back to. There's going to be a lot of good advice and whatnot. And then finally, there is going to be a winner. So if you stay to the end, you might get $50. You're welcome. Starbucks. So hope you like their coffee. Hopefully you're not a Dunkin' person. All right. So with that, I've introduced myself already. And so I will turn it to Brendan.
Oh, look at me there. Thanks for having me on, Steve. Appreciate it. I always enjoy these kind of conversations. I'm Brendan McCarthy. I'm the Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Ballyhoo Hospitality. We are a boutique restaurant group out of Chicago. We have 11 restaurants, both in the city of Chicago and the northern suburbs. We are growing rapidly and implemented TipHaus, just for everyone's awareness, about 18 months ago is when we fully went live with TipHaus. So for understanding of our operations, we have about 850 employees and looking to grow probably about 2 or 3 restaurants a year is kind of our addition status. But I've been in the hospitality space for 25 plus years, mostly in resort tourism, and I've been fortunate enough to work with all sorts of businesses, from hotels to resorts to restaurants. But right now we are concentrated on our Chicago area, and soon we'll be adding to some out-of-state adventures as well.
Great. Patrick.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Yearout. I work for Ivar's Restaurants as the Director of Innovation. Ivar's, for those who haven't been to the Seattle area where we're located, we are a seafood concept. We have 3 full-service seafood locations and 18 quick-service or fast-casual Ivar's locations. We also own a small chain of hamburger restaurants called Kid Valley. We have 4 of those. And we have a stadium division where we operate stands at some of the local sports stadiums here in town. Some Ivar's, some Kid Valley, and some other concepts. And then we also have a manufacturing division, which makes the chowder and soups that we sell in our restaurants, but we also sell to other restaurants and grocery stores, Costco, all across the country. So we do a little bit of everything when it comes to the restaurant world. I've been at Ivar's now for 25 years, and I've been in the restaurant industry for 32 years. So, and when it comes to, what's going on at Ivar's, I'm involved in a little bit of everything, a little bit of HR, recruiting, training, marketing, whatever needs to be done. I'm kind of that person. So, I'm very happy to be here this morning.
And thanks for joining both of you. So I think the conversation today obviously is around minimum wage, and in your home city and home state, Brendan, right? Like, Chicago is at $16.20, I think, or going to be on January 1st, and Illinois is at 15. In Seattle, we're at $20.76 starting January 1st, and $16.66 statewide starting January 1st. So we've been dealing with this in our home states for some time, and there's a lot of folks on this call that are in different parts of the country as well, and just starting to face some of these big increases. So I think this conversation is a little bit of what have we been doing and what have we learned along the way, and what are we considering as this continues into the future. So kind of jumping into all of that. Before the minimum wage really started moving for both of you, I think here in Seattle it was like 2014 or 2015 where the first move started getting made. How did you structure kind of wages for the different roles within your restaurants? And you can break it out by concept type if that makes sense. But front of house, back of house, support. Were there wage discrepancies, I guess? And how did you kind of look at that pre-minimum wage increases? Brendan, you want to start?
Sure, happy to. I think, to answer your first question about were there wage discrepancies, I would like to think no, there were not wage discrepancies, but did we have a variety of wages that we were paying? Yes. And did we start most people at the minimum wage where appropriate? Yes. But I think, with any hospitality group that has team members that join you for the journey and are with you as career professionals, as you see the wage increase, as you see the kind of the creep of wage inflation, it did make us really kind of pull back the onion a little bit and take a look at the layers and see where we had team members that maybe were outside of those original kind of parameters and help to set the roles and responsibilities that were set for that. One of the, I think, some of the low hanging fruit that we would say would be looking at those opening and closing responsibilities. Where did we have team members that we felt like were overlapped? We err on the side of having more managers than many of our competitors. We really find that is a differentiator for us. So the managers per se are not paid at the minimum wage, but the team members that they have helping, most of them are, certainly if they're tip facing, are paid at a minimum wage. And reviewing those opening and closing responsibilities so that we didn't have as many team members on site would be like a low-hanging fruit item that we did to help clean up the books there in those early years.
Sounds good. Patrick, about you, was there were you paying back of house more than front of house, in terms of a base wage? How did that look?
Yes, I would say our pay structure was very common throughout the industry. It was very normal, average, whatever word you want to use, in our fast casual locations, at the stadiums, and even at the manufacturing plant. The employees all earned wages. That was it. They just got their hourly wages. There were no tips. There were no additions to that. There was some, it was mainly based on as you moved up, the longer you were there, the more you earned. There wasn't a lot of discrepancy between the front of the house and the back of the house in that setting. In full service, there was a different story. The full service in the back of the house, their wages, the prep cooks, line cooks, and kitchen managers, their wages started a little bit higher, above minimum wage, several dollars above minimum wage. And then in the front of the house, the standard was everybody earned minimum wage. The servers, the bussers, and the hosts. And then when the tips would come in, for the servers. They would be paid in cash every night, and then they would tip out to the bussers and the hosts and the expos. And so, yeah, it was very, pretty standard for the industry before all the wages started going up.
Yeah. So then, obviously the world changes, minimum wages, and I think in our pre-conversations, we've talked about how many minimum wage laws we all deal with. In Seattle, there's, multiple, I think 6 within a 10-mile radius of the city of Seattle, different minimum wages that you have to adapt to. And Brendan, you were saying there was 3 that you're dealing with in your portfolio. What are some strategies that you guys have used over the last several years to kind of keep up with the increases, keep the business healthy, support the teams? What have you thought about in terms of like total compensation for employees and taking care of everybody in the restaurant?
Steve, you want to hit, or Patrick, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. I mean, I think we did a lot of the things that, other restaurants did in terms of operationally, making sure that our schedules were built to be as optimal as possible.
Absolutely.
Getting a lot of eyeballs on the schedule, so that it could be seen. We also have here in the city of Seattle, we have a secure scheduling law. So all of our schedules have to be posted 2 weeks in advance. And if we want to change that schedule, if we want an employee to stay late or we want them to send them home early, we have to pay them more. So there's that added cost on top of it if the schedules are not done well. So I think just making sure that, everything is, all the pieces are in place. And again, we have 2 weeks between the time the schedule goes up and it gets implemented. So there's usually a lot of time to check and double check to make sure that everything is correct. Other things like negotiating with our vendors to make sure we're getting the best prices, adding more technology to make sure that everything is efficient. I mean, we went through all those steps operationally. In terms of pay structure, there were 2 different things that we tried. One was successful and one was not. The successful one was adding tipping to our fast casual locations, and also actually in the stadiums we have tipping as well. We started using TipHaus, almost 2 years ago now, at the very start of 2023. We'd never done tipping in our non-full serve restaurants before. It was something, so when we introduced it with TipHaus. And that made a significant difference. We started seeing our turnover rates come down. The employees were not just earning what everybody else around them was earning. Yes, yay! Not just earning them what everybody else was, getting in the area. Certainly higher than if they were working retail. And so that was very successful. The thing that we tried that wasn't as well received was in full service. In full service, we decided to do all-inclusive pricing. And this was in 2015, right as the minimum wage started to go up. And it didn't go up to 15 right away. It started at like 9, and then, it jumped up every year. But we went directly to 15. We paid all of the employees in full service at least $15 an hour, and we raised the prices of our menu items to cover that amount. And then we told the guests, you do not need to tip. The tip, the gratuity, the service, it's all included in the pricing. So you don't need to leave a tip. The employees really liked that. It was very well received by the employees. Everybody was pretty happy with it, especially the back of the house, because they were earning even more at that time. Where it wasn't well received was with the guests. Our guests were, they were 100% convinced that they were getting the worst service in the history of restaurants because they weren't allowed to tip. And we got so many comments from guests who were unhappy about it and just wanted to tip. And even with the higher prices, they still wanted to tip. And so, and we had taken the tip line off the receipt, so they weren't allowed to do that. But yeah, that one didn't go over well. We did it for about 2 years, and then we reverted back to the model we had before.
Patrick, I'm so glad you brought up like things that didn't work, because I think we can all learn a lot from those those trial and error, and I think we all do that. We also tried a model that did not work for us. Just to kind of, in full transparency, we tried the model of adding a service charge and put that out there, and it backfired on us as well. And it was a reasonable service charge. I think it was about 3%, and the customers hated it. Our guests, really came in and they felt like we were, they were nickel and diming them or charging them for something that they didn't have to pay for, and they really rebuffed it. So we pulled it out, and they have preferred just to tip directly to our team members and really make that guest interaction. We don't have that anymore. While we felt like putting the service charge there was actually a way of taking care of some of those increases. And Steve, that was to your question, like what did we do to kind of deal with some of these increases? We felt that was a way that we could recoup some costs. The guests really preferred increased line items, to be honest. They don't really, if we raise $1 here and there for our food costs and for the items, they can understand that, because I think they're seeing that in their own lives. They're seeing that in the grocery stores. They're seeing the added costs, everywhere. They can appreciate that. But when we added that service charge, they felt like, well, what the heck? I have insurance to pay for too, or I have other things. Like, why do I have to do that? So we've gone away from that. The things that have been successful for us are really looking at staffing PARs, looking at being diligent about times in and out. Patrick, we don't have to post the same way you do right now, because we're under the threshold for the city of Chicago and those kind of things. But we do see, a little creep here and there of people coming in, maybe half an hour early or staying a half an hour late. And, you just have to be diligent operators and really make sure you are, being transparent about what hours you're expecting people to work, when you're expecting them to leave, and to provide that great guest service that we all like to do.
Great.
I would add one thing to that, which is the flip side of that is what we call our daily flash. It's just a spreadsheet of all of our restaurants, and it includes the entrees from the day before, the labor hours, and then the entrees per labor hour, which is our productivity statistic that we look at. And that sheet goes out to everybody. Every restaurant, every manager, district manager, regional, director of operations, myself, the rest of the office, owners, the president, everybody sees that. Nothing is a secret. And so there's a lot of eyeballs on it. And so if a manager slips, if a manager isn't paying attention, trust me, they get a lot of feedback from everybody. So just not keeping it a secret, making it something that is expected. And I think that has helped us a lot as well.
Yeah. Transparency goes over a long way. And I mean, to be honest, that's one of the
I'm having an office space, all the managers coming over and talking about the TPS reports if you missed like that's playing in my head right now.
There's plenty of them.
Get right every day, because you're going to hear about it.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
that's great. So you guys definitely have different business models, and I think you talked about some of the differences in wages and whatnot in terms of how you've handled different things. You also have different tip structures and policies within your portfolios and whatnot. How do you guys think about sort of the team dynamics, because it's a core component of total compensation now for pretty much everyone in our industry. And so kind of how do you think about the different structures and supporting the team and the creating the environment that you're trying to promote inside your restaurants?
I don't know, Patrick, you want to take that one first?
Again, so when we instituted tipping in quick service, we do a tip pool. So the money is spread amongst all the employees, not the managers, but it's spread amongst all the employees equally based on how many hours that they work. So everybody is we feel like everybody is contributing to the success of that particular restaurant. It doesn't work if the back of the house is failing. It doesn't work if the front of the house is failing. So we spread the tips among equally to everybody there. And it adds anywhere from, depending on the time of the year, like here in Seattle, we tend to be a lot busier in the summertime. That's when we have our nice weather. That's when all the people are taking the cruise ships up to Alaska. So in the summertime, it can get an extra $10 an hour. In some cases, closer to $15 an hour in tips. On the lower end, it's probably 6 to 7, in the winter for some of our slower restaurants. But that's still, an extra $6 or $7 an hour for all the employees in the restaurant. So that has been that has worked out really well for us. In the past year, when we compared the number of people that we've hired in quick service this year compared to last year, that number's gone down about 45%, 45%. So yeah, it's made a huge difference. And that was really
significant turnover reduction.
Yeah, the only thing that we've changed was adding tipping last year. So, and then in full service, we had to start making changes. It was about 10 years ago. As I said before, we used to pay out all the tips in cash at the end of the night. But as more and more guests started paying with credit cards, there wasn't any cash. There wasn't anything to give anybody at the end of the night because 80 or 95% of the people were paying in credit cards. And so we switched. It was a while ago, maybe a decade ago. We switched to doing all the tips through the payroll system. So everything goes through payroll now. It's all accounted for. And in addition to tipping out the servers or the bussers and the host, the back of the house is included in that as well. So the back of the house gets a portion of the tips. It's not as high as the front of the house, but it definitely adds to their paycheck as well.
That's great.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In our environment, we are only able to tip out people who are guest facing,
right?
And actually touch the guest.
Is that a Illinois thing?
Yep.
Illinois.
And so, we try to make it proportionate to their influence of that guest and the role that they play. At times, we do have a tip credit that we can apply. So we do look at, are they able to, make sure that they, one, make minimum wage, and then two, what is that wage that they end up making, which is significantly higher, in most of our locations than minimum wage. And, we have different layouts in each of our restaurants, different concepts in each of our restaurants, and we try to really model what we think is fair and equitable for each of those positions as we go through it. We have not tried Patrick's model of even distribution for all, but I think that's the greatest thing is really taking a look at your operation and getting an understanding of how you interact with guests and what does the individual role and responsibility and how does that contribute to that guest experience, and really kind of weighing out that there and looking at your neighbors too, like what are they doing, because you've got to hire, you want to hire the best people, and so you want to have that parity, right? Like what is everyone else doing in the neighborhood? So it's always a good thing to benchmark.
What to that point, and maybe to dig in a little bit on that. So are you using like a tiered structure for like hours worked, or how do you get to sort of the differentiation between the roles within the guest facing team?
Well, certainly, our servers have the most interaction with our guests and are the, leading interaction there, with then coming our bartenders, certainly the bussers and runners, or any of the takeout staff, depending on what the roles of responsibility. But we put the emphasis on that first line of defense, if you will, with our guests, or that first interaction, that great positive feedback that we can do. And that is with our servers and our bartenders. They do maintain the majority of the guests' tips. And we really see that interaction as we're just the conduit between the servers and those tips from the guest. We just help facilitate it for them. It's not our money. It's directly from the guest.
One of the things that we had done at my restaurant group, which I departed from in 23, was a tiered tipping structure. As the minimum wage kept going up, we had a higher back of house wage and minimum wage for front of house, and that compression started happening over the course of those early years. And so the way we got to different roles was leveraging the tip pool and providing a prep cook versus a line cook versus a sous chef, a support staff versus a bartender versus a server, and like being able to tier it out with like that kind of thing. So it's what's interesting is there's lots of different ways to come at this.
Yeah.
And you just got to try stuff. And we had also tried service charge around the same time Patrick was doing all-inclusive pricing, and customers threw up all over that.
Yeah.
As well. So we've all been there.
Yeah. It looks so attractive, because we already do it in, like, if parties of 8 or more and with banquets, and you think,
Right.
oh, we can just extend it to everybody, but it does not translate very well.
Somehow they understand it at 8 people, but when you go
but 6 people, no.
The world of customer service and hospitality is a funny one sometimes.
It is, and I'm sure you've all read Unreasonable Hospitality, and you see it in there too. It like didn't work at the high end, it doesn't work at the low end. I mean, it's customer or guests just don't want it, so it's crazy.
Really don't. Obviously, I know here in Washington, I think it's true in Illinois as well, all these minimum wages are now tied to inflation, so they will go up into perpetuity and whatnot. So I guess, for folks on the call, that are, dealing with this for the first time or still figuring this stuff out, as well as for yourselves, how do you think about, these future increases? And are you doing anything to prepare for that kind of stuff now, or, are you just going to kind of keep the movie going with what you've learned thus far?
I can say, that I think it seems to, what we have in place now seems to be working for us. As I mentioned, our turnover rate has gone down quite a bit. Our employees seem to be very happy with the way they're being paid. So I think we're going to keep on this same path. I don't see any appetite for us to go back to all-inclusive pricing or, service charges or anything like that. I think if anything that we do, it will be, again, investing in more technology and tools, things like TipHaus, to make us more productive, make our teams more efficient, and help them, be the best that they can be when it comes to serving the guests. But I don't see us changing anything, at least for now, because what we're doing seems to be working.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's good feedback, Patrick. I would say, we'll just continue to be as transparent as possible. And, with TipHaus has helped us be more transparent. I think being upfront with our team members and with guests makes a huge difference. So this is what we're all dealing with. There's only so much to go around. So how do we figure this out? And, for those who are just starting down a higher increase, I would imagine you've been doing this for a long time. It's part of operating. It's part of, running a successful business and trying to look for, hey, where is there a point we can shave here or increase here to make it work.
Make it work. Yep.
I will build on something that Brendan said, which is, at least this is how I felt 10 years ago when our wage, started to go from 9 on its way to 15 and now at 20, is that every time the minimum wage goes up, and especially when it goes up a lot, it's very similar, at least I feel, to the 5 stages of grief. So you start with denial, you go into anger, you go through some big emotions as a business owner or business manager. And, it takes some time to work through that and finally get to acceptance. And you get to that last stage, and that's where you're able to put together your plan to make it work. But I think what helps to get to acceptance and get you past denial and anger and depression and all those big bad feelings you're going through is what Brendan was saying about talking to your colleagues, talking to the other people in the industry, sitting in on webinars like this one, or talking to your hospitality association, finding out what works and what doesn't work with the people who are your peers, and getting solutions from them, and even talking to your employees about it as well. It doesn't hurt to ask them, hey, what did you at your previous job? What worked over there? What did you like? What did you not like?
It's one of the things I've always loved about this industry, since the day I got into it, is that collaboration, right? Like, yes, technically we're competing with each other for dollars or whatever, but at the end of the day, we're all fighting the same fight, and we're all in it together, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So I've always appreciated that collaboration that I've gotten, there's no other industry that I think collaborates as well as this one does, because you just want to see your friends win too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.